you ever wanted to lose belly fat, this is the video for you. So I'm going to go through 8 different things that will possibly help with you losing your belly fat and perhaps make you realise why things haven't necessarily worked in the past. There are going to be some actionable steps at the end, so if you want to wait to the end, and I'll help you with a bit of a download and things that you can do to improve your fat loss achievements. So we're going to start with genetics, and I've talked about this in a previous video, which you might want to look at, which is about your body type and how that affects you with your weight loss plans and weight loss goals. So just to quickly delve into it, obviously genetics plays a big part that we all have different body types. So there are endomorphs, mesomorphs and ectomorphs. If you're an endomorph, you carry weight more down your bottom half, so around your hips, your thighs, your bum, your belly. If you are a mesomorph, you kind of carry weight evenly all over. You find it easier to put on muscle, but also quite easily to put on fat as well. And if you're an ectomorph, you usually have a higher metabolism and you find it easier to lose weight. That changes after a certain age, obviously, but you generally have a thinner body, more of a straight shape compared to someone who's an endomorph. Because we're all different body types, we all put on weight differently, we all have to exercise differently, we possibly have to eat differently as well. And I said in my previous video, try not to have someone who's not your body type as your goal for your fat loss or for your fitness, because you're only going to set yourself up for disappointment. It's not realistic. But just bear in mind through this that lots depends on your genetics in terms of how you lose weight, where you carry weight. So for example, if you're someone who always carries weight in their stomach, it doesn't matter if you were to go and have liposuction to remove all that fat from your stomach, because as soon as you do it, if you don't change these fundamental things I'm going to talk to you about now, you will always going to carry on putting weight there. So even after having liposuction, the weight would eventually go back there again if you don't consider all these things we're going to discuss in this video now. So we touched on genetics. Now I'm going to move on quickly to eating better, not less. I don't particularly like the word diet because it makes me think of something that you do temporarily, with the idea that once you've completed the diet, you'll go back to eating as you did before. And what happens usually when you go back to eating as you've done before? I'm sure there's lots of people who've experienced yo-yo dieting, where you try something for a couple of weeks, you go back to your usual life, and then the weight returns. So I prefer to think of stuff as longevity dieting, which means something you're going to do forever, which sounds depressing, but it's not, because if you think about how you feel after you've eaten healthily and how you feel in yourself after you've eaten lots of crap, I'm guessing for most people that you always feel worse after you've binged on a load of chocolate and crisps. When you've eaten healthy, you usually have more energy, you feel better. I would never say to anyone, don't ever eat anything unhealthy, because that's just not realistic. It's never going to be something you can sustain. You should always allow yourself a little treat every now and again, but as always, as you get told, things are in moderation. Not just consuming things every day that are unhealthy for you, that make you feel like shit, that ruin your skin, that make you put on weight, and make you feel sluggish, tired. Longevity dieting is the way to go. What I like to do, or suggest to people to try as well, is think of your main food groups and pick possibly 5 different foods that you like or love in those food groups. So for example, your top 5 vegetables, your top 5 salad, your top 5 fruit, your top 5 meats. Think of those, and that is essentially your diet. What can you put together to make some meals that include those? When we think of foods, the most important thing, which is the next section, is protein. So protein in particular as we age is hugely important for our bodies and for how our hormones react, how we burn fat. Protein is harder for our body to digest, so therefore it uses more calories, believe it or not, to burn protein than it would to burn any other food in your body, which means it curbs cravings. It means that you don't get hungry so quickly as you would with other foods. So if you have a very heavy protein breakfast, you're unlikely to be hungry an hour, 2 hours later. When you have cereal for breakfast, I think most people end up feeling hungry, wanting their 11s, because you have that sugar spike, and then it comes crashing down, and then you are ready to eat again. So when you have a protein breakfast, so lots of eggs perhaps, or something else, then that will fill you up for longer and you won't have the craving or the hunger. And similarly, in the evening, to avoid snacking in the evening, if you have a high protein dinner, you're less likely to want to snack in the evenings. It also helps with muscle growth. So if you are exercising, I always try and recommend people to have protein within a 2-hour window after they've exercised. So I'm going to move on now to our hormones, and in particular, the hormone insulin. So when you eat carbohydrates, and that doesn't matter if it's complex carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates are vegetables, fruits, those are complex carbohydrates. And then you've got your simple, refined carbohydrates, which are sugary treats, so pastries, donuts, white bread, white pasta. Those are more of your refined carbohydrates. So anytime you have complex carbs or refined carbs, you have an increase in insulin in your body, which insulin is a hormone. Even our drinks as well, sugary drinks, alcohol, those are all refined carbs. So when we have anything that's refined, we have these glucose spikes, and our body releases insulin to deal with these glucose spikes. When you have refined carbs, unlike protein, because it doesn't fill it for longer, you have this big glucose spike, and then it comes crashing back down, you feel hungry again, and then you have some more. So it keeps going up, and there's little peaks and troughs of going up and down with each time you have a refined carbohydrate. To deal with these glucose spikes, your body releases insulin. When your body is constantly stimulated with insulin, and it's having high elevated levels of insulin, this is when you're going to put on weight. This is when weight gain happens. And it's also when you become risk of type 2 diabetes, because your body's releasing insulin so frequently, your cells become insulin resistant because they're being constantly overworked. So your body starts to resist them, and you have this insulin resistance issue, which is when you're on kind of borderline type 2 diabetic. I recommend for lots of people, and I include myself in this bracket, because of the hours that I work, I struggle with carbohydrates after a certain time. But you should try and aim for 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. So bear in mind that banana has 30 grams of carbohydrates. A piece of toast has 25 grams, roughly, of carbohydrates. A sweet potato has 20 grams of carbohydrates. An apple has 15 grams of carbohydrates. That doesn't leave much room for starchy carbohydrates, and also your body struggles to process starchy carbohydrates, and by that I mean pasta, rice, particularly white forms of pasta and rice. Often if you feel sluggish after carbohydrate dense meal, it's usually due to a big insulin spike followed by a drop in your blood sugar levels. So to try and maintain a nice steady level of insulin, rather than having these peaks and troughs that go on every time you have these snacks, these high refined carbohydrate meals, try and have complex carbs like vegetables, sweet potatoes, fruit, and protein. There is no carbohydrates in protein. So if you have that, you're going to have a more of a steady picture with your insulin, with your blood sugar levels. So you're not going to have such low dips in your blood sugar levels. You try and have these foods that are a little bit more calming on your hormones and on your body. Another thing you can also try is time restricted eating. So I'm a big fan of this, and I'm not a huge fan of restricted eating as in fasting. However, mainly just for women, it's beneficial to men, but for women, and particularly during your time of month, it can be quite upsetting for your body. It can increase your cortisol levels, which means your stress hormones. So I prefer to do time restricted eating, and it is good for your body to rest from having food in it. So when you aren't eating, your insulin is level, and when your insulin is level, that means that the fat burning properties are working more. When your insulin keeps spiking, the fat burning mechanisms in your body shut down. So if you aren't constantly having those insulin spikes, the fat burning will start to happen. The longer you can increase that, the better, obviously, for burning fat and losing weight. I recommend trying to have an earlier tea, so 5, 6 o'clock. They're not having any food or drinks that aren't, unless they're water, so no alcohol, no cups of tea, no sugary drinks. between 6 o'clock and say when you have breakfast in the morning at 7. So try and do 12 to 13 hours of this time restricted eating. So that includes your sleep in that, so that obviously you're not completely starving from not allowing yourself any food for 12 hours. It includes your 8 hours of sleep. But it's really, really beneficial to your body. So it's not a negative thing. It's not you starving yourself. It's actually very beneficial. So another thing that will help with your insulin and how your body deals with insulin is exercise. So when muscle becomes overloaded with glucose due to these dietary choices of sugary food, unhealthy food, fatty food, and that includes drinks, results obviously in weight gain. Exercise promotes the uptake of glucose without having to rely on insulin. It's especially beneficial for people who have insulin resistance. And certain exercises, such as resistance training, so that's with weights, or HIIT, high intensity interval training, increases your glucose uptake for up to 2 days after that training. So one thing I always want to make clear, spot reduction of belly fat is not realistic. It doesn't work. So when you think of, I don't know, if you want to lose body fat, belly fat, then you think, I'm going to do loads of crunches and then I'm going to lose loads of belly fat. You can't dictate where you're going to lose fat from. The bigger the muscle you work, the more energy it burns. So that is calories that it burns. If you work your legs, you're going to burn more calories than if you work, for example, your abs, because they're smaller muscles, they don't need as much energy. Similarly, I cannot stand these videos that you'll see on YouTube which say, do these ab exercises for 5 minutes every day and your belly will look like this. No, it won't. It really frustrates me. It depends where you're starting from. If you are at 30% body fat, you are not going to see the benefits of someone who is at body fat and is going to do those exercises. Yes, they'll be able to see muscles like that because they haven't got any body fat covering those muscles. If you're at 30%, 20% body fat, you won't see the benefits as much as someone who is carrying a lot less body fat around those stomach muscles. And again, burning just stomach muscles does not burn enough energy to burn fat from that one particular place. So I always recommend for people, walking every day is really, really beneficial. So if you can do that, that's brilliant, and try and do 25 to 30 minutes every single day. And if you can do resistance training, so that is weight training 3 times a week. That sounds a lot, but try and do around 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's really beneficial. And then HIIT or sit, high intensity interval training. So that's when you exercise for say 30 seconds, get 15 seconds to recover, repeat again. Or sit, which is sprint interval training. You can either do that on a rower, on a treadmill, on a bike. 30 seconds, all out, flat out, 9 out of 10 effort, and then recover for another 30 seconds. So that's sit, sprint interval training. That is really, really beneficial to do, and do it once or twice a week. The next thing is non-exercise activity, so NEAT, as we call it. You will burn so many more calories in your day to day, if you increase your NEAT. So NEAT involves walking, say dog walking, doing the housework, hoovering, cleaning windows, doing the gardening, all the activities that aren't actually exercise, like weight training, cardio, etc. If you do exercise 3 times a week, but the rest of the time you're pretty much sedentary, sat down at your desk, sat down at the computer, sat down at the sofa, sat down driving to work, sat down driving back from work, you are obviously not going to burn as many calories throughout the day as somebody who is on their feet more regularly. There are ways to increase your NEAT, your non-exercise activity. So little things you can do: move the kettle. If you work from home, don't have the kettle so close to you. Move it away from you, so you have to, say, go down the stairs or up the stairs to make yourself a cup of tea or a coffee. Get up every now and again and do some squats. Run up and down the stairs a few times if you work from home. If you don't work from home, take the steps instead of taking the lift. If you park near to your work. Park further away than parking right close outside your house or the shops. And adding all of those little extra bits of neat activity into your day will make a massive difference overall. If you find that you are sitting down the majority of your day, you will see huge benefits, huge changes if you try and be more active day to day. My husband decided in January that he was going to get healthy again. He did some fasting, the intermittent fasting. He did exercise. He started walking the dogs daily, which is something that I normally do every single day. And he also got really into his neat activities, doing lots of, and this was all beneficial to me, believe me, I loved it. But lots more hoovering, mopping, doing the washing, cleaning. And his calories were flying off him. He was burning them so quickly because before that he was sat down so much more. And so when he started taking on the shifts, honestly, you would not believe how many more calories he was burning because he was changing his lifestyle from being more sedentary to being far more active day to day. So that also leads us into habits. Habits are something that I really removed it altogether. Difficult to stop if you don't replace them with a new, better habit. So for example, if your habit is always to have pudding after you eat, if you just say, right, I'm not having pudding or anything after I eat from now on, you'll most likely go back into that old habit. If you can replace your habit with, instead of I'm not going to have anything, I might have a yogurt or I might have a piece of fruit, and make sure your favourite pieces of fruit are readily available. So make sure you're organised enough to get, I don't know, if you love pineapple, then getting packs of pineapple, because you are more likely to enjoy that than if you forget about it and all you've got left is a banana. I don't particularly like bananas. Replace a bad habit with a new good habit. Some people find when they stop smoking, if they normally have cigarettes, say for example, in their car, if they then replace those cigarettes with loads of chewing gum, then they end up chewing loads of chewing gum, and that helps break the cycle of automatically picking that fag out because you're in the car. You then automatically pick out a chewing gum because you're in the car, and it helps break the cycle because you've replaced it rather than. You can do something called temptation bundling. So that is when you reward yourself with a habit after you've done a good habit. So for example, if we take NEAT into this, so non-exercise activity, you can allow yourself to be sedentary and watch a Netflix episode after you've been down the stairs 3 times, and do that every day. So, right, I'm going to allow myself to watch my favourite Netflix program at the moment, but first I've got to run up and down the stairs 3 times, and try and do that every day. So you're bundling that temptation of doing the bad thing, the thing you're trying to avoid. It's not bad, obviously, watching Netflix, but the lack of activity in between that is perhaps a negative thing you want to stop. So if you add something into it, then it can help create that habit. Another thing is gateway habits, making your new habits as accessible as possible. So often for people, I think they find things overwhelming, which is part of the problem of starting a new good habit. So if you wanted to start walking, for example, and then you said to yourself, right, I'm going to walk every single day for an hour. Well, that's quite overwhelming. That's quite a lot of time to allow yourself, particularly if you have a busy day. So if you just say to yourself instead, oh, I'm just going to walk around the block twice, you'll probably find once you start walking around the block once, you've actually get into it, you start to enjoy it, and then you think, oh, actually, I'll go for a bit longer, I'll go for 3 blocks. And sometimes before you know it, you've done 40 minutes because you're actually enjoying it. So rather than overwhelming yourself with saying, I have to do an hour of this, bring it down a little bit lower, see how you go, and often you'll end up going for longer. And then try to make your positive habits easier. So for example, if in the fridge, if you've got, I don't know, you put chocolate in your fridge, if you bury your chocolate underneath vegetables and all the stuff in that vegetable rack, the vegetable tray at the bottom of your fridge, if you put it out of sight more and bury it more, the chances are, because it's not so easy to get to, that you won't be asked to go and reach down and get it, because it's harder. Whereas if you put something that is a healthier habit right in the front of the fridge where it's easier to get to, so I don't know, for example, chopped up fruit, and it's easier to just snack on, then put that in an easier accessible part of your fridge. Put the stuff you want to try and avoid lower down, buried in the fridge. In my fitness app, as part of my membership with my fitness program, there is a habit tracker. So it really helps to track those habits and make you feel better once you've done them. You get rewarded for them. You have little achievements. So you've done these habits for 5 days in a row and you get little badges. So having these sort of things as a motivator, having your 5-day badge is a little motivator to help you with improving these habits. Finally, stress. Stress plays an enormous role, I think, in weight gain because we rely on certain habits to falsely improve our ability to cope with stress. So for many people, alcohol is a big crux that we depend on for stress. Also, eating sugary food is something we depend on for stress. Emotional eating when we're stressed, these are all things that play a huge role in weight gain. So if we look at alcohol as an example, and I'm going to cover alcohol in another YouTube video in a week or so. When we're feeling stressed in the evening, one of the first things we might think about is, oh God, the worst day, I'm just going to grab myself a glass of wine, which easily turns into another glass of wine, or if it's beer. And the problem with having alcohol is something to help you get through stressful situations, is that it propagates bad habits. So if you have a glass of wine, 2 glasses of wine, you're probably then more likely to snack on some unhealthy foods. You're probably likely to have a big bag of crisps. You're probably likely to have some nuts or something like that. You're also more likely to have a bad night's sleep because actually there's this false narrative that drinking will help you sleep, but it doesn't. You're much less likely to be in deep sleep when you drink alcohol. And so then because you've had a bad night's sleep, you usually end up feeling a bit shitty in the morning. You're then less likely to do some of the things that you thought you were going to do. So you're probably less likely to exercise because you feel a bit shitty. You're also more likely to eat crap because you feel a bit shitty. Usually when we've got a hangover, we crave carbs, we crave sugary drinks, we crave sugary food. So then it increases all those other bad habits, which then again make us feel crap because once again, we haven't hit our targets, our goals for doing all the good habits that we wanted to do because it's propagated by this need for alcohol. And then also with alcohol, it's very calorific. So we end up once again putting on more weight because we've had glasses of wine, we've had beer, which is also really high in sugar. When you stop drinking for a couple of weeks, you will 100% notice improvements to how you feel in your life. And it's not necessarily improvements to your weight, if that's your main focus, but it will 100% improve your energy levels, it'll improve your focus, it will improve your ability to do some of the goals, some of the habits that you set out to do, and it may also improve your work performance as well. Think about this. Think, how's my sleep? How are my energy levels? How's my skin? How's my body feeling? How's my weight loss going? How's my diet? All of these things will improve if you can learn of new ways to manage your stress. So instead thinking of breathing exercises, instead think of perhaps using meditation. And that sounds like, oh my God, really hippie shit. But so I use Peloton, I use the Peloton app, and every night, my kids do the same now, I listen to meditation. And I've picked my favourite ones that aren't so annoying to help me get to sleep. And it makes a massive difference to help me sleep because I have a very overactive mind. So if I use that to help me get to sleep, it really, really makes some improvements. Breathing exercises, so taking time to breathe. Very often, it is just allowing yourself 5 minutes to lie down and breathe. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, taking really big, deep breaths. And it's surprising when you do that because sometimes you do that at the end of yoga. And it is surprising when you start having those big, deep breaths that you think, oh my God, I haven't actually breathed like this at all today. I've been so busy with everything, going at 100 miles an hour, I haven't taken any time, not even 5 minutes, just lie here. And don't tell me you haven't got 5 minutes as well, if you think you haven't, because how often do we spend scrolling on our phone for half an hour, which leads to sometimes an hour? We've all got 5 minutes. Just allow ourselves that time, 5 minutes lying in a dark room, no lights on, and just breathing in and out for 5 minutes. Big deep breaths. And also perhaps practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness might just even be lying in that dark room and thinking, how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling like that? What can I do to improve how I'm feeling? What can I do to change this happening tomorrow or the next day? Not getting angry about it, thinking of solutions. What can I do that could improve it? That might also help. And again, and I always say this, one of the most beneficial things for stress, and it's hard, I suppose, it's easier said than done. One of the most beneficial things for stress is exercise. All of your doctors will tell you exercise helps stress. Every single course I've ever done on exercise and mental health all tell you that exercise improves your stress and your mental health. So if you are having a stressful moment, then take 10 minutes out of your day, 15 minutes out of your day, go for a power walk, do a quick HIIT workout, and I've got plenty of short 10-minute workouts on my YouTube channel. Do all of that just for 10 minutes, just to take some stress out. It increases and releases endorphins, those happy hormones, and then you will feel better after you've had that 10-15 minutes to yourself. Everyone has 10 or 15 minutes. It's whether you choose to spend that 10 or 15 minutes scrolling on Instagram or choosing it to go and work out. So in summary, it is crucial to adopt this whole holistic approach to fat loss. It's also crucial to stay consistent. So for example, you had a French course, a 6-week French course, and you had to get to a certain level in 6 weeks. But you took a few days off here, a week off there. By the end of that 6 weeks, you're not going to have learned as much French as you hoped. And it's exactly the same as if in 6 weeks of trying to do a program or burn fat, if you're having cheat days and taking days off here and there and falling back to bad habits, it's going to be a slower process for you compared to someone who stays consistent, who increases their NEAT, improves their eating, reduces their refined carbohydrates. You've got to stay consistent. That is when you're going to receive results. And it's frustrating, I know. Everyone would love to have a quick fix, but those quick fixes, as we discussed, like liposuction, can sometimes just be temporary. Those quick fixes, as in dieting for 2 weeks or fasting for 3 days, are sometimes temporary because we will burn it quickly and then we'll put it back on. If you want to have a lifetime of feeling better, of feeling healthier, of improving your fat loss, you need to stay consistent with all of these things. So I hope you found this video useful. So my actionable steps are in this video at the bottom in the description. There is some goal setting PDFs. So in the goal setting PDFs, it gives you actionable steps you can take, barriers that you might possibly have to take in those steps, how you can overcome those barriers, and your progress. PDF includes 10 sheets so that you can write down your goals each week, if that helps, because sometimes it's better to have smaller, little manageable goals than try and have one big goal, which is I'm going to lose this amount of fat or this amount of pounds in 10 weeks. How are you going to get there? What are you going to do? How are you going to change your life so you can see those changes? Think of the smaller little goals that you can do each week and you can tick off and feel like you're achieving something, rather than having this one big goal that feels far-reaching, perhaps not achievable, a little bit overwhelming. It's better to have much smaller goals as well. And you can also download my fat loss guide in the description and the links below. And then next week, I'm going to go into a bit more detail about stress and emotional eating. So if you want to find out about that, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you in the video next week.